Well, you've heard the saying, I'm sure, many times. The electorate is always right. This is often the one of the terms or one of the phrases that politicians defer to when they lose. But in this particular case, in this election, it's not applicable, according to many, many people who are very upset still that the Conservatives lost the election and really trying to find silver linings in the results. I don't know that there are many. Yes, they increased the seat count. Yes, they increased their total support. But look, the numbers were up exponentially when it comes to voter turnout at a high rate of 68%, which is quite impressive in this day and age in which we know that traditionally or typically voter turnout is under 50% and oftentimes well under 50%, depending on the election. So is the electorate always right? That's one of the questions that I'm going to ask you. Is blaming Canadians the right approach? Because this is what many conservatives, hardline conservatives, are doing right now. They're blaming Canadians, saying Canadians are stupid, Canadians are dumb for voting for Mark Carney, instead of perhaps doing some self-reflection and some reflection on what the conservatives did wrong. And how they blew it, really. I know that there were different circumstances that led to this downfall, including, of course, Justin Trudeau being ousted, number one, and the carbon tax being neutered, number two, and the Trump factor, number three. But the Conservatives, I think, need to do some more self-reflection instead of just simply saying Canadians are all idiots for voting for Mark Carney and the Liberals again. And look, you can state your. I don't have any problem with people questioning why this happened, but to just simply label Canadians as idiots and morons for supporting the Liberals, I think is part of the problem, and it's indicative of a cultural problem within hardline conservatives. So, look, is the electorate always right? That's one of the questions that I'm going to ask you to talk about when we open the phone lines between noon and 1 today. Dr. John Gillis will be by for house calls between 11 and 12, so we'll take your calls between noon and 1. But fortunately for me, I'm not on Facebook anymore, and I know that, look, for those of you who are, that's all well and good, but from what I hear from people talking about, it's a cesspool right now on social media of people and name calling and just gnashing of teeth, I guess, is a term that I would use. I do go on X from time to time, I never ever post, but it's same thing. So also, what about Pierre Poilievre? What's his future? Can he survive as leader, as the Conservative leader? I don't see how he can. I think that the Conservatives need to start over and start fresh with somebody who's elected, first of all, who has a seat. I don't think it's fair to expect somebody to give up their seat for Poilievre. Although if somebody wanted to do that, they wanted to be a sacrificial lamb, they can certainly do it. But that all said, folks, look, the gnashing of teeth is what came to mind today, a biblical phrase, of course, when it comes to people's response to this. So I'm going to ask you your take on this. And also, can Mark Carney govern with 169 seats? I would say probably he can. And I'm sure that they're working the phones right now to try and flip a couple or two or three MPs over to their fold and form a majority. Then they won't need any support. Of course, ironically, the NDP have the balance of power again, and so does the Bloc. But the Bloc, we can dismiss the Bloc for what it is. With the NDP in their 7 seats, without a leader, look, they can be kingmaker. But I'm sure that Mark Carney and others are looking to perhaps sway or persuade some people to cross the floor. All they need is 3 or 4 MPs, and they'll have a majority government. So, anyway, we shall see. Some things that you can talk about, again, when we open the phone lines between noon and 1 today. Thanks so much for tuning in and listening, everybody. We appreciate it very much. Thanks again to Steve Murphy yesterday for sitting in with me here and taking your calls for a couple hours, and always enjoy our chat and always enjoy Steve Murphy. So thanks to Steve for his analysis, always insightful. What a wealth of knowledge that guy is. And thanks to Vanessa Van Den Ness as well on the other side of the glass. The control board's doing a fine job, as always. All right, let's jump into this thing. If you build it, people will come. Swim Nova Scotia pitches new pool for Annapolis Valley. Acadia University announced in February it would permanently close its aging facility in June. This off the CBC website. Bette El-Hawary, Executive Director, Swim Nova Scotia, joins me to talk about all this. Betty, thanks for joining the show.
Hi there. No problem. Thanks for having me.
All right. So first off, tell us about the decision that Acadia has made to close the 6-year facility.
Well, as I've said before, it was quite a surprise to our organization and our swimming community when they made the announcement. And, we're still trying to work with Acadia to see if there's any opportunities to expand the lifespan beyond June 15th, just to bridge the gap until a new pool is open, because it does create a huge void in our swimming community within Swim Nova Scotia, but then other aquatic activities that take place in the pool are also left with a void.
All right, what size is the pool at Acadia? It's not a 50-meter pool, is it? I think it's a 25-meter, I'm reading, if memory serves me correctly.
Yeah, it's a 6-lane, 25-meter pool with 2 wings that are very small leisure pool space.
Okay, so ideally, in a perfect world, a 50-meter pool really meets a lot of the requirements in this modern age, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, so it could be a blessing in disguise, perhaps, that if in fact if you get all those on board, the federal government, provincial government, whomever stakeholders would be required to get that 50-meter pool in the area, that would be, I suppose, a blessing in disguise, if that's the right term.
It could be, but again, it's going to take at least 3 to 5 years before a new pool is built. So we would have liked to have that opportunity to bridge the gap and make sure that there is a swimming pool available at all times in that community until a new one is available.
All right. So so obviously disrepair. I'm assuming the pool has fallen into a state of disrepair. Is that what's going on here?
Well, we're not 100% certain. Based on the engineering reports that were presented publicly, we didn't see any evidence of structural damage to the tank. So we would like to bring in a consultant to work with the engineering companies that have been working with Acadia University to see if there are any opportunities for some short-term solutions where there is no structural damage. What are the major safety issues that need to be addressed? How much does that cost? And how long would it take for those repairs to take place to be able to keep the pool open for another 2-3 years potentially? Okay,
is there a 50-meter pool in Nova Scotia?
There are 2, Centennial Pool and Dalplex Pool in Halifax.
Right, so Centennial Pool, that could be closing as well, though. That's still up for... That's an option, is it? What's the deal with Centennial right now? What's the latest?
We haven't had any information from HRM on the state of Centennial Pool or its lifespan. Their staff are currently working on a report to present to council, which I believe they're presenting sometime in the fall or early winter of 2026. And that report will discuss the aquatic needs in HRM. So does Centennial remain open? Does it get closed? Do we need new pools? Where would they be located? So they're doing, my understanding is they're doing an elaborate analysis of the current pools in HRM.
Okay, so nonetheless, so there's still an HRM, and that doesn't, and although it would serve the needs of some in the valley, but having something close to the valley would be, or in the valley itself, would be paramount, I would assume.
Exactly, yes.
Okay, so would a 25-meter pool be an option if that's all you can achieve, or is it a 50-meter or bust?
Oh, for sure. We would be very happy with a 8 or 10 lane 25-meter pool plus a leisure pool. That would also serve the community in the Wolfville Kings County area very well.
Okay, what type of costs are we looking at here?
Latest costs are about $14 million for a 25-meter pool and about $26 million for a 50-meter pool. So those are pools that have been built in the last 2 years, and that's Canadian prices.
Okay, look, just on first blush, that does not seem like an astronomical figure, considering the value that it would bring to the community, and I'm sure you'd agree with that.
Oh yeah, I do agree, and the funding doesn't come from just one source. I believe there's grants available from the federal government. There would be provincial contribution, municipal contributions, along with community contributions. So to get to $14 million or $26 million, it's an investment in the future.
All right. So who might champion this? Who would be the best positioned people to champion this?
Well, I know there is a community group advocating right now, and they're in the process of becoming a formal organization and getting registered with joint stocks. So they have been advocating for the last 4 years. And my understanding is that Kings County, the municipality, is in the process of leveraging a piece of land. So once they have a piece of land, I believe the project will move forward, but they are still in that negotiating position for the land.
Okay, and so in the meantime, you're going to have a lag here. So this is the challenge. Is Acadia open to a conversation about keeping the pool open until you can get something built, or where are we when it comes to dialogue?
Yeah, well, I haven't had an opportunity to sit down with them yet, and I've reached out to them a number of times, so I'm hoping to have that chance in the next couple of weeks.
Okay. In the meantime, how do you plan for future events and swim meets and all that stuff? That must create a real challenge, I would think, administratively.
It is, yeah. So at this time of the year, we're in the process of planning for next season. So all of our competitions from September 2025 through to August 2026. So we're in the process of finalizing all of the competitions and their locations. And so we're, in that process, but it might be delayed a little bit until we hear from Acadia. Ideally, we would love to continue to host events there. We usually host 5 or 6 meets at that pool, and that's a loss for that local economy as well. So if there is an opportunity for us to extend that lifespan, we'll definitely have some events there. So our schedule of events for next year might be delayed until June, until we know for sure what's happening with the Acadia pool.
And you might not be able to or capable of hosting anything for a number of years until something gets built, if something gets built.
That's right. Yeah, which does put a bit of a strain on some of our other teams and facilities to pick up some of those extra competitions, which is, it's difficult because it's volunteers that run all of our events, and finding the time in their busy schedules is often challenging. And then facilities already have existing programming, so if they're able to release more space for us to hold more competitions, it does become quite challenging, with one of our major facilities being closed.
Okay, so on the timeline, on the time horizon here, what's next? What can you look towards next?
Well, like I said, I'm still trying to meet with the leadership at Acadia University in hopes of being able to work with their engineering company to do a state of good repair. And if there's that option, I think that will dictate a lot. If we're able to do that, we'll be able to get in there and evaluate if it is even feasible to keep the pool open for a little bit longer.
But based on that, Betty, sorry to interrupt you, but based on that, it doesn't seem as though Acadia has a whole lot of ambition here to keep this pool open. What am I incorrect or correct in that analysis?
I'm not sure. Based on some correspondence, you might be accurate, but based on other conversations, maybe not. So it's really hard to tell right now. We haven't had a firm no. So, I'm going to remain optimistic for the next couple of weeks.
Do you think that they have some type of responsibility to do so in order to service the community, or do they need to look after their main interest and their bottom line first and foremost?
I think that they have the responsibility to be transparent and accountable to their community, the broader community in that area.
And do you think they've been that way so far, or no?
I don't think so.
Okay, but you remain hopeful and optimistic that with some pressure and with some help and with some motivation from other stakeholders like yours, that things can change here.
Yes, I do.
Okay,
yeah,
okay,
I'm going to be optimistic with
okay, listen, let's keep on top of this. Thanks for your time and good luck.
Great, thank you.
All right, take care. Bette El-Hawary, Executive Director of Swim Nova Scotia. Man, oh man, when it comes to tariffs and Trump and the automobile industry, I'm confused. I'm officially confused, folks. I know it doesn't take much. We'll try and get some clarity from Moshe Lander on all this when we come back. All right, joining us is Moshe Lander, economist from Montreal's Concordia University. Moshe, thanks for joining us. We appreciate your time.
Hello.
All right, so my oh my, it's confusing, at least for me anyway, and perhaps that's a given. I get confused easily, but when it comes to the automobile industry and tariffs, it's hard to keep up with what's going on. U.S. President Donald Trump signed executive orders yesterday that he said will give some temporary relief to the automotive industry besieged by multiple tariffs that have caused anxiety and concern throughout the deeply integrated North American market. Can you just kind of give us a tariff overview? Where are we right now, if you will? Offer some clarity, please.
Well, he's trying to get back to no tariffs on the auto industry. It's not a surprise that any tariffs on that auto industry are going to do tremendous damage. And so he didn't come out of the gates with mild tariffs. He came out of the gates swinging. And the results were pretty quick. There were closures, layoffs on the 401 on this side of the border. And on the other side of the border, there were also consequences. And so what he's been trying to do is work his way back by reducing them and now offering some form of relief, which is I'm going to keep some of the tariffs in place, but I'm also going to offer some government money to try and help you out. But it's counterproductive because the tariffs are still in place and you can't give federal money forever. But the belief is that at some point, manufacturing jobs in the U.S. will start to materialize, and he'll try and claim that it's because of the tariffs and how great they were.
Okay, so how realistic or unrealistic is that?
It's pretty unrealistic. There's a reason why the jobs weren't in the U.S. for the last 40 years. It's because other countries were able to do it more efficiently. The mistake is to assume that other countries did it cheaper. It's not a function of the cheapness, it's the productivity part. So if you pay a Canadian auto worker twice as much as you pay somebody else, but that Canadian auto worker is 2.5 times as productive as somebody else, the job stays in Canada. That's a great deal. You pay somebody double and you get 2.5 times the effort out of them. You don't have to worry about job losses. So what's been happening over the years is that other countries, say Korea or Germany or Japan, were saying we can make the same quality car at a lower cost because our workers, because our factories are more efficient. For him to think that somehow the U.S. should have those jobs back is to effectively say what we want then is less productive auto production in this country. Yes, it creates jobs, but those jobs aren't jobs that are valuable other than to the workers themselves. But those workers are being delayed from going into industries where their skills would be put to more productive use. And so it's unlikely that auto companies are going to respond to this other than out of fear. And as soon as the fear factor is gone, they'll leave, just like they did in the 1980s and 90s.
Okay, so is it possible that Canadian cars won't be sold in the United States without tariffs at some point?
Without tariffs, sure, at some point. The problem is, will it be without tariffs in the next 6 months before the damage is done or before damage is irreversibly done? I'm not so sure about that. The good news is that Mark Carney's first act after the election yesterday was to call Donald Trump and say, I think we need to meet. And the agreement is that they're going to meet in person. There's a G7 meeting in Kananaskis in June. Presumably that will not be their first meeting, but I'm sure they will meet on the side. And the conversation is hopefully going to be one of business. Donald Trump is a better business person than he is a politician, and that's not saying a lot for either of those two skill sets. Mark Carney is a business person rather than a politician, and so if they can have that conversation, maybe they can see eye to eye on what good business looks like, and then how do you craft that into policy so that Trump can satisfy his base, which is wavering a little bit these days, and so that Carney can come back and say, this is exactly what I promised you, which was we've got to make the tariffs go away, and we've got to try and find a way to move towards freer trade the way we have over the last 80 years.
So what does this mean for investment in the automotive industry on the Canadian side? I would think that it would be a factor.
Yeah, I mean, investment's going to dry up for the time being. Whether it returns or not is the bigger question. But when you're a business and you're making a 30, 50-year investment in capital, plant, equipment, and things like that, you always have to deal with some uncertainty. That's just a given. What you don't need is additional uncertainty that is completely avoidable. And so what's coming out of the White House, tariff or no tariff, is such mixed messaging. The various cabinet members that appear on TV say different things from each other, which is different things from the press secretary or from the president. And even the president himself doesn't have consistency of messaging other than just attacking Joe Biden whenever he gets a chance. But today he'll say something, tomorrow he'll say exactly the opposite. The day after that, he'll double down on what he said originally. And then he'll tell everybody that whatever I said didn't really happen. It's fake news and you're imagining it. So, businesses are going to say, look, I can't invest in this climate in the U.S., let alone in Canada, where he's menacing us, and we have little control over him, where even the U.S. economy has little control over him, but we have less so.
Okay, so if in fact we were ostensibly shut out of the American car market, what might that mean for the automotive industry here in Canada?
We're done. We're done. Yeah. Look, we can't export cars. Conceptually, you could export cars philosophically, but those cars now have to reach the port in Halifax, and then you have to ship them to Europe. And by the time that you're dealing with all of those transportation costs to get them across the ocean, there's a German automaker who's saying, I'm already here, and I've got factories in every major European country. Like, thank you, but we don't need you, and we're doing it better. So that's not going to work. And if you're going to move it in the other direction, then now you've got to get those cars from mostly Ontario out to the West Coast, move them through the port of Vancouver, and send them to Asia, where you're going to have Chinese, Korean, and Japanese automakers saying, hello, we're already here. So, there's not enough cars to go around in Canada to justify all of that investment in the auto industry. So I would imagine that it would massively shrink. There is an opportunity there, of course, for Canada to rethink its love affair with cars and how it wants to use them. But I don't think that that's something that the government is going to entertain at this point as a forward-thinking policy. It's going to be, how do we protect auto workers and their jobs?
Okay, so the bottom line is we have to convince Donald Trump to drop these tariffs.
Canada cannot go it alone. It's 40 million people. An integrated North American market is 500 million people. You can't spread those huge fixed costs over only 40 million hosers. You need way more consumers, and it's got to be with access to the U.S. market, and it's got to be without the tariffs.
Okay, how optimistic or not are you that this will right itself at some point?
Well, the tariffs will go away at some point. The problem is, has the damage been done? Once you lose that trust. I always said that trust is something you build in a lifetime and you burn it in 5 minutes. And so given that now we're always going to look suspiciously at the U.S. and saying, all right, you did it to us once, could you do it again? I'm not entirely convinced that it couldn't be a Democrat president at some point in the future decides they want to do it too over labor standards or the environment or whatever else they want to use as their justification. Once you open that playbook, anybody can borrow from it. So I think that the damage might have been done here. The auto industry might continue on in Canada, but there's always going to be a raised eyebrow where we're looking at the U.S. saying, are you truly committed to this, or are you going to backslide at the first opportunity?
Man, that's pretty grim. That's a grim outlook, Moshe, I must say.
We've moved in one direction for 80 years. The last time that we saw tariffs like this in the Canadian economy was in between the two world wars. It's because we don't do that sort of thing. We've recognized the advantages of it. To go back to that sort of style is not progress. It's a massive step backward. But again, it took 80 years to get to the point where we were 6 months ago. If it takes us 80 more years to do it, imagine what that auto industry would look like 80 years from now. I can't imagine, neither could you, what auto company is going to want to invest with that thought of who knows where we're going to be in 80 years' time.
And of course, the EV industry and the billions of dollars we're dumping into that needs to rethink perhaps. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with electric vehicles, but again, the idea of trying to spread those huge investments over 40 million Canadians is very different than spreading it over 500 million North Americans that would be willing to buy electric vehicles. There's an entire infrastructure that even has to go beyond the factory, right? You need to be able to provide outlets for those cars to recharge and change the way that the distribution network works to make those cars viable. So again, it's one of those things that when everybody thought that this was the wave of the future, okay, I don't mind making that investment. But when Trump comes to power and says the days of those are over, well, those companies that have spent that money say, why would I ever spend money on this again when that's what happens 5-10 years into a movement that's trying to move us in that direction? Thanks, I'm going to sit this one out. And so whether we rely on gas-powered vehicles going forward or whether we try and do some sort of hybrid, again, it's a lack of clarity that those firms are going to say it's really difficult to make these decisions and investments when we just don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Moshe, great. Appreciate your insight. Thanks so much. We'll do it again.
Anytime.
All right, take care. Moshe Lander, economist from Montreal's Concordia University. And something that perhaps you might want to talk about when we open the phone lines between noon and 1 today. When we come back, backyard breeders. We'll talk about this with Tracy Jessiman. We'll be back. All right, it's been a while since I've had a chat with Tracy Jessiman, who's an animal rights advocate and of course, an author. And Tracy, nice to see you.
Nice to see you, too. Congratulations on your wedding.
Oh, thank you so much.
Kelly.
Thank you so much. And thank you for your kind gift, your artwork, which I have not looked at yet. I'm going to wait.
Okay. Let me know.
Okay. and the banana bread as well.
Yeah, you're welcome.
We appreciate it. So, you're semi-retired or how?
I am 100% full-on retired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's that been like?
It's been great.
Yeah.
It's been great. We worked together for 17 years side by side, so there was no big adjustment for us in our marriage.
Yeah.
Spending a lot of time together. But we're cycling and I'm baking and painting and doing all the retired stuff.
Yeah.
Mandatory white running shoes, white socks.
Nice. But it's hard to kind of turn off the animal rights hat, though, I would think.
It's very tough.
Yeah.
Because it's been a lifelong passion for sure.
Yeah, because at one point you wrote a regular column in the Herald, and
I did for 7 years.
And your book that kept you busy for a couple of years.
That did. Now that the book is it's now out of print.
It is.
Yeah, as of about 2 months ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it available online anywhere?
I think you have to go to the publisher if you want one.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's all right. Listen, amazing work over the years, advocacy work for sure.
Thank you. And I get a lot from it. I feel good doing it. Some of it's tough and heartbreaking, but you got to stand up for them.
Yeah, for sure. So this brings us to why you wanted to come in today.
Yeah, backyard breeders.
Yeah, tell us about this.
Well, backyard breeders are not a puppy mill, I guess, just to make that clear for your listeners. Backyard breeder would be characterized as a person that maybe has an unaltered male or female dog, and they offer them up for breeding situations.
So altered meaning?
Not spayed and not neutered. Sorry. Thank you for the correction. I often forget that.
Yeah.
And most times they are just a family pet, and they're breeding them for because they love their pets. They want to share the pet with other people.
Yeah.
Or they are doing it for money, or trying to give their children the experience of birth. So they're not really good reasons to breed them. There's a lot of risks that come with breeding your female dog. I mean, something can go wrong while they're carrying the puppies.
Yeah.
Something can go wrong when they're birthing the puppies. Her health could be at risk. I guess another distinction would be that backyard breeders are not like responsible breeders who do genetic testing on their dogs to ensure that they're not passing on like hip dysplasia or eye issues that can cause blindness. Responsible breeders are breeding for both temperament, personality, and traits, like the Labrador Retriever traits or the Border Collie traits. They're protecting that. A responsible breeder is going to have you sign a contract that says that you cannot, if you buy this puppy from us, you cannot breed it. And they will often look for proof that you have spayed or neutered the dog within a certain amount of time. And a really great breeder will have in the contract that if you can no longer take care of that dog because you're sick or something's going on, you can't take care of the dog, they will take that dog back and rehome it so that it doesn't go into a shelter or a rescue. Mm-hmm. And backyard breeders really often don't have that ability to take that dog back and keep it and rehome it to another home. So those dogs often jump into shelters and rescues. So that's a big problem with backyard breeders.
What kind
also.
What generally are these purebred dogs? Are they or not?
A lot of times they're mixed.
Is that right?
Just a mixed dog with another mixed dog.
Yeah.
You know, it's not necessarily going to be a purebred. It can be, but there's. There's so many dogs sitting at rescues and shelters of every size, color, male or female. Right. There's different ages. There's puppies. And so there's really no great reason to ever breed your family pet.
Yeah, I would think the majority of people, when they adopt a dog, would do it through the SPCA or something like that.
Yes.
And that's mandatory that they're spayed, correct?
Absolutely. If the dog is of age or the cat is of age, they have been spayed or neutered. Yeah. And if they are young, the deal is you get them spayed or neutered and show proof that has been done. Or they will get that done. Often it's before because it's an older dog.
But it's usually a requirement of adoption. Yeah, that's right.
Keep the population down.
That's right. So these would be people who would just not be, they would Kijiji, or not Kijiji does no longer exist, I suppose. Facebook, whatever.
Well, Joan and I were just talking about that. That she was going on Kijiji a couple of days ago, and she couldn't believe the dogs and puppies that are showing up.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
So Kijiji's still a thing. I didn't even know.
Yeah. So it's crazy.
Yeah, I thought Facebook would but Facebook would be another place where dogs would be.
Yeah, I don't know if you can put a live animal on Facebook Market. Can you? Yeah. I don't know. But so there's lots of ways that people can still advertise if they have bred and word of mouth in a neighborhood also.
So perhaps some people, in looking to avoid the costs of getting a puppy and having to pay for the spade and neuter and all that, that may be a reason why they get a dog through these means.
Through the backyard breeders? Yeah. Maybe, yeah. But if you go to a rescue or a shelter, if the dog has been spayed and neutered and has age-appropriate vaccinations, and you spend $400 on that dog, that's a bargain. Yeah. And you've got a dog with a personality profile too, so there's no unknowns. Yeah. To me, there's just no reason to breed your family pet. Mm-hmm. And when a backyard breeder decides to do that, they don't necessarily understand the risks to that female dog what can happen.
Yeah, so you say backyard breeder, that's kind of a term. That's not necessarily people that have the dogs in the backyard.
No, it's just it's the handle, I guess.
Yeah. How much is it even known how much of this is going on?
I do not know. And I think if you're looking at Kijiji and ads on Instagram or wherever, it's not it's popular.
But it's not illegal though.
It is not illegal. It's more, to me, it's immoral.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to breed your, what would be an example, a Frenchie. It's my understanding that Frenchies, when you breed them, it's one puppy or a couple, but those puppies need to be birthed by cesarean section because their heads are really big. And you think about the little French bulldogs, the birth canal is so small that those dogs can go into distress. And again, if you're not doing genetic testing, how do you know you're handing over a healthy puppy? Yeah. That's the biggest problem. We had a situation in our neighborhood, a young family, 3 small kids, beautiful black lab, got him as a puppy. And before his 2nd birthday, he was full of cancers, arthritis, and he had a back problem. Yeah. And they had to let the dog go, and it was heartbreaking for the whole family. Wow. And he was such a great dog. I mean, they brought the dog down to see me so that I could say goodbye to him also, because he was everybody knew him, and they were just heartbroken. And again, it's bad breeding.
So you're saying for some, it's not about making money; it's about the having the experience of.
Some have said, they want their children to experience the birthing process and raising a puppy.
I guess, is there some validity to that? I mean, can it be done in some? Is it you're full stop and don't do it at all?
I'm full stop. Yeah.
I would think that like anything though, you would have differing opinions on this. or people have differing opinions. I'm sure that you've heard.
Well, of course, everybody has different opinions,
Yeah.
but anybody involved in rescue or understands how rescue works, they're not going to wave the banner that you should breed your female dog.
Yeah. And you don't know how many pups you're going to get either, right?
You don't? I know you're going to find homes for them. I mean, right now, rescues and shelters are full.
Yeah.
So if you breed your dog and have 5 or 6 puppies, what are you going to do if nobody's looking to adopt your dog or buy your dog, I should say? Yeah.
And of course, you got to find a match to breed the dog with. And how does that work?
Like maybe an ad in
like
the
a
paper?
dog dating website? Or
like eHarmony. Yeah. Maybe, or just word of mouth between people if they're looking to breed their female. Like I'm not in that headset or mindset, I should say, that I would ever consider doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, we adopted Portia.
Yeah.
She was an ex-breeding dog, and she went into distress with her last litter of puppies. She had to be rushed into a veterinarian clinic to birth the puppies, and then they spayed her because she could no longer breed.
Yeah.
And I think a note went up in a local paper, free dog to good home. So a rescue stepped up and brought her in and fostered her, and we ended up getting her. And she's a wonderful dog.
Yeah.
Wonderful dog.
Yeah. So again, your message to people is just simply don't do it.
Please.
Yeah. Okay.
Rescues and shelters are full.
Yeah.
Already.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, Tracy, thanks for coming in. Great to see you again.
Nice to see you too, Todd.
And
Thank you.
don't be a stranger.
I will not.
Okay. All right, take care. That's Tracy Jessiman, animal rights advocate. Mark Brewer, University of Maine, when we come back. All right, joining us for a chat is Mark Brewer, University of Maine political science professor. Mark Brewer, thanks for joining the show.
Happy to do it as always.
All right, 100 days. We made it to 100 days without total collapse anyway. Well, that's something, isn't it?
101 now, Todd. Today's 101.
Wow, what 101 days it's been, eh? Just unbelievable.
That's for sure.
All right, so look, let's start, I guess, with the polling, which is not good. Trump obviously, like always, if polls are good, he supports them. If they're not, then it's fake news. It's the same routine, right?
It's the same routine, and I think he's even going beyond like not supporting them or calling into question their veracity. Now he's just making up his own numbers. Like he was giving his speech in Michigan last night, and he said, the new polling showing that my approval rating is down. It's not accurate. Really, my approval rating's in 60 to 70%. So he's just making up his own numbers now. Wow.
And he still he can't let the Joe Biden slam go. I mean, why you would think with 101 days in, you've got your mandate. What's with the Joe Biden infatuation here? I don't get this.
I don't either, but there's a really interesting column in today's Washington Post by Dana Milbank that I think probably is the best explanation of this. And Milbank's argument, and he looks at Trump's remarks in Michigan yesterday, and he counts up the number of Biden references there were. I guess there were 21 or 22 specific Biden references, not counting the 9 that he made where he was trying to get from the crowd whether they preferred Crooked Joe or Sleepy Joe. Yeah. But what Milbank's argument is that Trump really liked campaigning because he had no responsibility for anything and he could say anything he wanted. He doesn't like governing as much because it's hard and he's getting blamed for things that he's doing. And so really that's his way of trying to get back to the campaign, right? Of being able to criticize Biden. That's what he liked to do. Actually governing, not so much.
Yeah, and it's not even, there's nothing even new about it's like the name calling and the bathing suit thing, and it's just like the same old routine. You'd think at some point Republicans would say, "Okay, we've heard all this before," but they seem to lap it up. Why?
Well, I think again, there's his base, which will love him and revere him. I think regardless of what he does, of course he's famous for saying early on in his first campaign he could shoot somebody in the middle of Fifth Avenue and his supporters wouldn't care. I think that's true. But then I think if you look at some other Republicans or maybe even some independents who voted for him, I don't think they're lapping it up as much, and I think that's where you're seeing the erosion in his approval ratings, which have plummeted pretty dramatically since he took office. If you read various reports of his speech at Michigan yesterday, Within about 20 to 25 minutes, a number of people started heading for the doors. I don't know if that's accurate. I didn't watch the speech. I read a transcript, so I'm relying on those accounts. But I think there are certainly some people, not Trump's diehard base, who will be with him to the bitter end whenever that comes. But I think there are some other people who probably voted for him in 24 who are already having a fair amount of buyer's remorse, and those are the people I think that are driving this decline in his approval rating.
Okay, the economy, my oh my, look, it's how can you justify, especially when he talked about how everything would improve on day one, instantly, and now all of a sudden he's looking at whatever metrics you use here, the numbers aren't good when it comes to the economy, the stock market. How does he justify this?
It's a good question. I mean, I think it's one of two things. He's either A, detached from reality, right? That he looks at all of these recent numbers, including, the one that came out this morning showing that GDP actually contracted, I think, for the first time since COVID hit, under his watch in the first quarter. So he's either got to be just completely disconnected from reality, or, and it could be an and/or, I suppose, or he truly believes that this short-term intense pain is going to result in longer-term massive gain, which is it's an argument that some of his advisors have made. He makes it occasionally, but not as often as he could, and that's because I don't really know if he believes it or not. But I think by any objective measure, anyone who is trying to be connected to reality would look at the performance of the economy since Trump has taken office and say that it's been terrible.
Okay, so the concept that if you apply tariffs and does he even get that tariffs? I mean, it appears as though that he doesn't even understand the basic fundamentals as to how tariffs work, and that it will be Americans that are going to eventually pay for that. Does he get that, or what? Or is that just a naive routine which benefits him politically?
I would like to think that he actually understands that. I don't know that, but I would hope it's not that hard of a concept. I would hope he understands that.
Right.
But it doesn't appear that he does, right? But tariffs fundamentally, businesses will eat a little bit, I suppose, but they're going to pass on the vast majority of these cost increases to consumers who are the American people. Okay,
executive orders. How legal are the executive orders, or unconstitutional are some of these? Because that's in question right now. What can you tell us about the legality or the constitutional veracity of these executive orders?
Well, the concept or the actual instrument of an executive order is certainly constitutional, right? There's no doubt about that, presidents have long issued executive orders. The Supreme Court has weighed in on the constitutionality of the executive order as an instrument of executive power. There's no doubt that that's constitutional. Once you start getting into specific executive orders that Trump has issued, some of them, there's a range, right? Some of them are, first of all, there's some that are just statements. They're not really doing anything or trying to enforce anything. So the ones that are just, statements or for show, I think you can set those into a separate category of political theatrics. We don't have to worry about those, at least in terms of their legality or lack thereof. Then you've got two other categories. I would say three, but I guess at this point, for fairness, let's say two. You've got some pot of executive orders that are probably constitutional, most certainly, or most likely, highly likely to be constitutional, and meet, kind of previous patterns of executive orders from previous presidents. And then you've got a second bucket where their constitutionality is very much open to debate, where the Supreme Court will ultimately, you would assume, have to be the body that answers that question. For me, within that bucket, I would say there's really two groups there. There's some that it's an open question. I'm looking at constitutional law and previous Supreme Court rulings. I don't know how they're going to rule. And then there's another bucket that this is clearly blatantly unconstitutional unless the Supreme Court dramatically changes how the Constitution's been interpreted for 200 plus years. These aren't going to withstand scrutiny. But I won't go there. Let's leave that to the courts.
Okay, when do people start becoming concerned about midterms and all the impact that this might have on midterms?
Now, Republicans are, and really they have been for the last, as soon as the tariff talk turned into tariff action, Republicans, even if they wouldn't admit it, Republican office holders and Republican operatives started getting concerned, because whether or not Trump understands how tariffs are going to work, Republican office holders do, and they could see this coming. And so they've been concerned about this now for weeks, if not for a couple of months. But now that concern intensifies. I mean, numbers like we saw today, we're getting a jobs report on Friday, and right now it ain't looking good. You're going to start to see some Republican office holders, I think, start to speak out maybe a little bit more forcefully. Maybe I'm wrong, but people care about getting reelected. And right now, if you're a Republican, 26 is not that far away, and you got to be nervous.
And how many rounds of golf has Donald Trump played since taking office?
I don't know, but it's a lot. It's more than I've played.
Yeah, the most expensive rounds of all time, taking Air Force One down to Mar-a-Lago every weekend. I don't know how much that would cost, but it's got to be a staggering number, right?
I would think so, along with the full Secret Service detail and everything else. Yeah, I would imagine they're pretty expensive rounds. Although he doesn't have to pay greens fees, right?
Yeah, he owns the course. That's right, and he can cheat, and tell everybody that he won every game and in every round, which is ridiculous. Anyway, listen, Mark, I really wish that we could balance this and have something good to say about Donald Trump, but it's I say this a bit tongue in cheek, but it's almost impossible, if not impossible, to do so.
Well, I mean, I'll give you one thing that we could say, at least a partial positive. And I talked about this a little bit with some of my students in Intro to American Government yesterday, because our topic for yesterday was the federal bureaucracy, right? And I said, look, I mean, Trump came into office promising a thorough examination of the federal bureaucracy, which hasn't happened in decades, right? And I think most people would say probably needs to be done, because there is a certain amount of bureaucratic bloat. There is a certain amount of bureaucratic accountability at the federal level in the United States. Trump came in many ways with a mandate to do that, and if he would have led a thoughtful, data-driven, in-depth, careful process of re-examining the American bureaucracy top to bottom, I would argue that would have been a very beneficial endeavor to engage in. Unfortunately, that's where the positive ends. He didn't do that, right? He turned the entire thing over to Elon Musk, and Musk has made a mess out of it, and is probably going to end up saving no money whatsoever, significantly damaging the American parts of the American bureaucracy that he shouldn't have been touching, and it's hard to see any positives out of it. What unfortunately could have been a very positive situation.
Mark, always great. Appreciate it, my friend, and let's do it again.
All right, sounds good.
All right, take care. Mark Brewer, University of Maine, political science professor. When we come back, House Calls with Dr. John Gillis. We'll be back.
Thanks.
All right, it's Wednesday. That means it's time for House Calls with Dr. John Gillis. The way to reach us if you've got a health-related question or concern is 902-405-6000. Again, if you have a health-related question or concern that you would look for some advice, and give us a call at 902-405-6000. Dr. John Gillis, welcome to the show, my friend. Always appreciate it.
Good day, sir. How you doing?
I'm all right, but look, the Leafs. What can you say? I mean, it's just... should we press the panic button or no? What are your thoughts on this?
Oh, they just haven't shown up. They didn't show up last night. They were lackluster and back to the, just a couple slack goals. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, and Matthews. Look, it's hard to pile on to Matthews, but you're paying this guy. He's your captain, and you just got to get more out of this guy. What are your thoughts on Matthews' play?
Yeah, he's not getting it done. I mean, it's other guys that are outperforming him, and you could argue that the first goal was luck, but the power play goal with a giveaway, and Nylander doesn't even want to back check to catch the guy who ends up scoring. So
yeah, Nylander. I mean, look, earlier in the series he was lights out. He was dominant. He was back checking, and it's just strange. He seems to be one of these types of players that you just don't know what you're going to get from game to game, and that's not how you get it done in the playoffs, right? Obviously.
100% consistency.
Yeah, for sure. So what's your prediction? Do you think they get it done in Ottawa? I know you hope they do, but what are your thoughts on where this goes?
I have no idea. I really don't. I mean, it's frustrating. It's the eternal heartbreak every season.
Yeah. Do you think that the home ice advantage means anything to the Leafs, or is that irrelevant?
Well, it doesn't seem to. I mean, I guess they won the first two at home, but
Yeah.
as we've talked about in the past, I've had a very spotted record there of them losing against some very average teams. So.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, it's frustrating. There's talk about perhaps going with a different, changing up the goaltending. Do you think that would be the right move for Game 6?
Well, I mean, maybe, but he's played well. I mean, he gave up 2 goals.
Yeah, he's played well.
One of which was a deflection, the other was a 2-on-1. So
For sure.
I guess we'll see.
Okay.
It's above our pay grade.
There you go. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. This is not a political show, but I will ask you about your kind of thoughts in general on the federal election, just because. Why not? Any thoughts in general on what transpired 2 nights ago?
Yeah, some interesting trends. I mean, it's no secret I'm a Liberal. I expected the Liberals to win. I thought they would get just over the majority threshold. They didn't. I think there's different reasons for that. The NDP vote collapsed entirely, and the Conservative vote surged, particularly in rural Canada. And it highlights the challenges ahead to try and bring things together. And I hope Carney is up to that task and takes seriously the millions of people who didn't vote Liberal and voted Conservative. And I think he'll work with the other parties to make the Parliament work. And I just hope we can focus on the task of getting the country moving better and protecting ourselves from the U.S. And I guess time will tell. I was happy with the results here in Nova Scotia, and some wins and some good friends back and some other friends in. So for me, it was a good day. But we have to respect the, as I said, the millions of people who voted Conservative or who voted for other parties, and to try and not gloat about it, but to realize that there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I read today Scott Moe is kind of reaching out to the new Prime Minister, saying let's have a reset. I'm not sure that Danielle Smith is used that type of language, but something to that effect. Do you think well, obviously this is a time perhaps to have a reset and to kind of put away the polarization, if at all possible, and govern for the entire country, but that requires cooperation and a new approach that everybody has to take, right?
That's right, and I hope we'll see it. I mean, Danielle is not off to a good start, if that's her intention. She wrote something, I don't know if it came out today or yesterday, but it was, more talking about Polyev than about Carney, and it was not super conciliatory by any means.
Yeah. Do you think Polyev survives as the opposition leader, or the Conservative leader, I should say?
I don't see how he can. I mean, you lose your seat. I mean, sure, you can ask someone to step aside. I mean, that's happened for the winning party when a leader has led the party to victory, but maybe run in a tough seat and lost. But I don't know how you square off. And this is nothing personal to him. I can't see the party agreeing to it. I mean, he's held that seat for 20 years.
Yeah.
He was in line to be the Prime Minister, and the people in his own riding said no thanks. So I think they're going to end up moving on from him. Where that goes, who knows? Yeah.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us for house calls with Dr. John Gillis. If you've got a health-related question, give us a buzz, 902-405-6000. What have things been like in the ER in Dartmouth General?
I was there last week. It was busy, but it was not as insane as it has been. It was, you felt like you were somewhat in control of the place, but it really comes and goes, and it's still a work in progress. But cautiously optimistic that maybe, and some of it's time of year. We're out of the kind of the most of the cold and flu season. We're not into the the heavy outdoors. People out there hurting themselves. Although again, those things don't tend to take as long. But yeah, it's still busy and there's still a lot of work to do. And again, now that elections are over, hopefully we can turn our attention back to some of those things.
Okay, fair enough. 902-405-6000. Mike's giving us a call. Hello, Mike.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Doctor, I have a friend of mine who sometimes I think he's out in right field, but he told me something today, and I looked it up about nicotine, and he claims that straight nicotine, not in a cigarette with all the other poisons, but just straight nicotine actually has health benefits. And I read it, he's not wrong, but do the benefits outweigh the cons of nicotine, would you say, or just stay away from it altogether?
Yeah, I mean, look, vaping nicotine is better than smoking. Nicotine does have an impact on your cardiovascular system. There may be some, sub-benefits that it has positive effects. In general, I view it as a negative thing. I don't think it's, again, as bad as, if you're talking about it to get off cigarettes, do it every time. Just using it.
He wasn't a smoker. I don't think he's vaping it either. Like, by the sound of it, he's getting it off Amazon and I don't know, like eyedropper or what, and I did look at it, and it promotes weight loss, helps fight Alzheimer's and Tourette syndrome and Parkinson's. I'm just wondering if do you know anything about this, or is it just like a far-right website?
It also raises blood pressure and, can put a strain on your cardiovascular system as well. So, is it all bad? I would say no. Is it something I recommend to people? No. So it's, if you're a smoker who was addicted and you're trying to get off, then it's a better solution. It's kind of like people who try to say that wine has health benefits. I mean, yes, there are studies that show some decreased cardiovascular risk for small doses of wine, but it also causes a whole host of other problems. So it's, in my mind, it's sort of the same analogy.
So the cons outweigh the pros more or less, is what you're saying?
Generally speaking, unless it's, to get off cigarettes.
Yeah. No, I get it. All right, awesome. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Take care. 902-405-6000. And when it comes to wine as well, it's the grape that you could drink grape juice, could you not, Dr. Gillis, and get the same benefit?
Yeah, I mean, that's the idea, that the tannins and some of the components that are in the grape can be beneficial and have health benefits. It's definitely not the alcohol.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Stick right there. 902-405-6000. Host calls continues when we come back. House Calls continues with Dr. John Gillis. The way to reach us, 902-405-6000 if you have a health-related question or concern. 902-405-6000. Do it, and Dr. Gillis will do his best to give you a hand. Steve's giving us a call. Hello, Steve.
Hi, how you doing?
Doing well.
Good. Sorry, I'm driving on the highway. I got you on Bluetooth. Hope it's okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, thanks. Just a quick question for Dr. Gillis. I just found out that I have a fatty liver disease. I'm not much of a drinker. I'm 52. Arthritis. I take Humira for my arthritis, but other than that, generally healthy, but and not a big drinker. I'm not overweight. I'm not small, but I'm not obese or anything. Is there anything I could do to help out? Kind of cure that problem, or is it just kind of what it is?
Yeah, so alcohol is a major factor. For some people, it's diet. We see a lot of these. I mean, I see a lot of abdominal ultrasounds on people who don't drink or drink, some, a little bit, whatever that means. And this is fairly common. So it's something that can be monitored. It's important. So most people, it's not a big deal. Certainly by cutting out alcohol and improving diet, you can lessen the amount of fat on your liver. So it is something to take note of and to be aware of. It's typically not something to panic about, I guess I would say.
Okay, well that's good to know. When I first got it, the doctors didn't seem too crazy overexcited about it, but with two young kids at home, first thing I thought is, oh, geez, something wrong with the liver, and you kind of go into your own stupid panic mode. So I was just more worried than anything, I guess.
No, absolutely.
Okay, Steve, don't panic, pal. That's the message.
Thank you very much.
Okay, all right, take care. 902-405-6000. John, hello.
Absolutely.
Okay, Steve, don't panic, pal. That's the message.
John, you're on.
Okay, all right, take care. 902-405.
He's going to hear it in a second here. There you go.
Okay, Steve, don't panic, pal.
All right, I'm going to put John on hold. John, listen, like everybody, listen through. When you're on hold, don't listen to the radio because there's a delay. And this is what you're hearing here. So let's go to James, and we'll go back to John. James, hello.
Hi, good morning. A question for Dr. Gillis. I guess it's both a healthcare policy question and a medical system question. Primary care, we've got 100,000, 90,000, whatever it is on this wait list, may be going down. That's all good, but it's still a significant number. People who do not have a, quote, primary care practitioner, a family doc or a NP, and lots of innovative things are happening, and I won't give all the list, but is there hope, or is this intractable simply because aging population, hard to recruit doctors, etc.?
I don't think it's impossible. I mean, it's going to take a real concerted effort on a lot of fronts to break down barriers and change how people think about this. And, I think some good things have happened. I mean, this government is certainly very aware of it, and I think they're trying. But there are a lot of factors. I've said this a few times on the program. Person power is part of it. But we never realized that with changing demographics, doctors aren't working themselves to death anymore. We have more women in the profession, which has been a very positive development. But, women time away for their families and to have kids as they should. And, that, is such wonderful for the profession. Bottom line is people aren't working 60 hours a week anymore, seeing, 50 patients a day. They're working 30 to 40 hours a week, seeing 30 to 40 patients a day. So, you do the math, whatever business you're in. If you're a drywall company and you're putting 20 panels a day, 5 days a week, that's 100 a week. You're putting up, 10 a day, 4 days a week, well, your production goes way down and it's harder to service the population. So somebody didn't think about that, in the last 20 years. So we have a lot of catch-up work to do in terms of our providers. We need to use technology better to provide service to people where they are, with the caveat that some things need to be seen in person. You can't just dump it to the emerge, which is what is happening, unfortunately. And there's so many other factors. You've heard me talk here about incentivizing people to work. Someone had the great idea, mainly about 10 years ago, to start putting people on salary in the medical profession. But in most cases, nobody bothered to say, well, you still have to have certain performance metrics. You can't just, see 2 patients an hour. And I'm exaggerating a bit, but that has, there's clear data, particularly in emergency rooms, of departments that are fee-for-service or blended, have a much higher throughput, much higher productivity than those that are on salary, where there's, no accountability for performance. So some of these things are monetary. But some of them are system-based and management-based, and it's hard to get alignment. You have the professional organizations, you have the health authority, you have the government, and if I had a salaried job, was working 35 hours a week, I don't think I'd want to go back to the other way. But there has to be balance, and we thought about that for a long time. Well, I think there is hope, and I think some good things are happening, but there's a long way to go. And the fear I have is if this continues. I mean, I'm 51.
Excuse me, I'm going to have to hang up. There's someone at my door.
Okay, James. Okay. All right, Dr. Gillis, finish your thought, please.
Say, there are people of my demographic that are tired of the stress of working in an emergency department, and that's already happened with a lot of nurses. In that, have been around experienced, and experience matters. Experienced people, tend to work faster and better because, they've seen things before, they know systems better, and you lose experience, you lose productivity. So we have to be very careful to retain people as well. We've already lost a lot of senior nurses, and I hope that trend slows and or that we can reverse it.
Fair enough. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us for house calls with Dr. John Gillis. If you've got a health-related question, give us a buzz. 902-405-6000. We've got some people on hold. Stick right there. We'll get to you, and we get some room for others as well. 902-405-6000. House calls continues when we come back. House calls continues with Dr. John Gillis. Give us a buzz at 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Jeff's give us a call. Hello, Jeff.
Good morning to both of you.
Hi.
Dr. Gillis, could you kindly elaborate, as much as you know, the do's, the don'ts, and the pros and the cons of IBS, and what are the triggers and what are the preventative measures? And finally, I'd like to ask, does it ever lead to Crohn's or colitis?
Yes, you said IBS, correct?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so IBS is irritable bowel syndrome, which is sort of a catch-all condition of stomach and bowel problems, usually characterized by spasm, pain, diarrhea, sometimes a burning sensation, and sort of an irregular, unpredictable bowel cycle. While being annoying, it is not viewed as severe as what we call inflammatory bowel disease, which is Crohn's and colitis, which are conditions where the bowel actually gets very inflamed and can cause intense pain, and often requires strong drugs or surgery to treat it. The two are not specifically related. Is it possible to get Crohn's disease when you've had IBS? It is, but they're not believed to be related. So IBS, irritable bowel, is related usually to diet, and stress can add to it, but it's very dietary. And often when people analyze their diet, make some changes, they can settle down the symptoms by removing the irritant. There are some drugs that can help as well, more symptom control drugs, as opposed to for inflammatory bowel disease. We have drugs that are very strong immune modifying drugs that affect how the body attacks itself. And some of the stuff has, there are people out there living with Crohn's very well with very few symptoms now thanks to these advances. But it still can be very nasty. We see people all the time who are just having terrible pain attacks with Crohn's and colitis, needing strong pain medications. Surgery is an option, but unfortunately what we see, people have had one or more surgeries. It can lead to scar tissue adhesions, and then these people will often develop bowel obstructions, which is just another problem. So two different conditions, and important to understand the difference and how to handle both, I guess is what I would say.
I've been just recently diagnosed, prescribed a med for IBS. It's a 14-day treatment, 3 tablets daily for 14 days. This will be my day, and already I'm feeling some positivity from taking it. It's Saxine, 550 milligrams.
What's it called, sorry?
AXINE, 550 milligrams.
Yeah, that's a relatively newer medication. And you say you're halfway through it. Is it helping?
Today's my 3rd day. It's a 14-day treatment, and you take 3 a day. And already I do feel a difference. I'm not so gassy, and I'm kind of. This is the first time ever I've had it for many more years than I want to admit. But this is the first time it's been directly being addressed, and I just hope the outcome is positive, because living with it can be. You can run into compromising situations when you're out in public, and perhaps you're eating the wrong food, or you can run into embarrassing situations. But nonetheless, I appreciate you addressing it.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Take care. 902-405-6000. Dave, hello. Hi, Dave. Dave, are you there? Okay, we'll put Dave on hold. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us for house calls with Dr. John Gillis. Again, 902-405-6000. Dr. Gillis, I mean, with almost all of these diseases and conditions, stress is a trigger for so much stuff, right? It really is.
Absolutely. Blood pressure, pain, sleep, you name it. Stress affects weight loss and weight gain by driving up your cortisol levels. Yeah, so there's just a lot of things that happen with stress, and it's medicine and health can be complicated. Just little things. If you can get somebody feeling a little bit less stressed and get them sleeping better, and then adds better diet to that, it's amazing how much better people feel. Even with my pain patients, for example, sometimes the first thing I do with them, I don't give them something that's mainly for pain. There are some drugs that do pain and sleep, but you can get somebody who's just sleeps terribly because of pain. If you can, be a bit facetious, but knock them out a little bit so that they're getting a proper sleep, they're I feel 30% better just because I'm sleeping.
Yeah.
Makes a big difference.
Yeah, for sure. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. I know that we talked about measles, and look, I know that it gets old sometimes, but the story continues to evolve in the United States. Measles spreading, and we hear about outbreaks in here in Canada as well, in Alberta, and it really comes down to just a lack of vaccination. That's the bottom line with it, is it not?
Absolutely. I mean, it's not anything more than that. These diseases were basically eradicated. Now they're coming back. I guess people didn't get vaccinated, and it's having real consequences. I mean, 6-year-olds shouldn't be dying of the measles, but that's been happening. Has it happened a lot? No, hasn't been a lot, but 2 dead kids in Texas is too many. It just no need for it.
What RFK and his perpetuation of anti-vaxxing. I mean, this is dangerous stuff. What's your message to people when it comes to RFK?
Well, I mean, the guy, first of all, he's not a health professional in any description, and he's caused real harm. It's okay to take another look at things. It's okay to be skeptical, but these are vaccines that have been researched and used for 30, 40 years. There's no safety consideration here, and the immediate impact, or it's not immediate, but the delayed impact is that people aren't getting immunized, and the immediate impact is that literally kids are dying, and that's wrong.
Fair enough. Okay, 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. For house calls with Dr. John Gillis. If you've got a health-related question, give us a buzz. We've got some open lines for you folks. If you've got a question, give us a call, 902-405-6000. House calls continues when we come back. All right, taking your calls, the way to reach us, 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. So, we've had a day to digest the election results. And some key points here. Elections Canada says more than 68% of eligible voters cast a ballot in the federal election. Almost 20 million Canadians, which is great. I think that's always good when we've got numbers up around 70%, especially considering generally election turnout is under 50%, depending on whether it be municipal or provincial, but they're kind of riding between 40 and 50%. So the fact that we've reached almost 70% threshold is good. It means people are engaged. So some of the questions, what motivated so many people to vote? And in a stunning reversal of expectations in polling from just months ago, the Liberal Party of Canada under Mark Carney secured a fourth term with a minority government of 169 seats, pretty darn close to 172 seats needed for a majority. Other notables, of course, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh did not win his seat, and he is done. And Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, in a pretty shocking turn of events, did not win his seat in Carleton. And he's stated that he's staying on and will look for a seat, I suppose. It'll mean somebody will have to resign or step aside and allow him to run in a by-election. Whether or not that happens or not, we shall see. So I kicked off the show, and I'll kind of repeat what I said. The saying "the electorate is always right." You've heard that term, right? Does it apply this time? And I would suggest that for many, and again, that's a general term, but I do think for many conservatives, blaming Canadians for this loss and the electorate for the loss is not the right approach. Perhaps analyzing why Pierre Poilievre's messaging and policies fail to get the job done might be a better use of people's energy and time. Because clearly it did not resonate to the point where they met the threshold to form a government. So has the appetite for pretty intense negativity crested and scared people away? I would suggest that it has. I think that when all is said and done, that although that has garnered Poilievre's support, some support, I think it's hit a threshold, and I think that a new approach is needed. I don't know what that is. And that's basically what I said when I opened the show. Now, I got an email. I'll read it from Michael, because he took the time to write, and then we'll go to the phones. By the way, to reach us, of course, is 902-405-6000. Michael says this. Says, during this morning's opening monologue, you mentioned, don't quote me on this, the Conservatives think that Canadians are stupid. I was quick to believe your argument was essentially an aggregate of sound bites and or headlines on the election's results from the current national news feed. So, I've started to peel that onion, and lo and behold, I can't seem to find any references or resemblances to Conservatives suggesting a displeasure with Canadians' political choice based on their lack of cognitive knowledge. Somewhat confused, I thought you were talking with the Leafs and not the recent election results. I've checked several national, regional, and local news outlets. Very few reputable social news feeds have not found any validated sources which reflects the statement in question. Disappointed I am, as I believe you inadvertently brushed a great deal of Canadians with a very wide brush, though it is very reasonable for tribal instinct to kick in when your team loses. You should know that feeling. It is quite well entrenched in your DNA, Leafs fans. I'm quite confident that many blue Tonga-wearing savages, conservatives, are disappointed from the outcome of the elections. Please remember one small detail. Though we might have different political views, we remain red-blooded Canadians who have but one objective, to be true, north, strong, and free. And he finishes it with, go, Habs, go. Michael, thanks for sending the email. But listen, I think you're kidding yourself. And I think that people are not being realistic to think that there's not some seriously upset conservatives right now. And what proportion of that is, I don't know, but I think it's a large proportion of conservatives that feel as though Canadians, I stand by that statement, that Canadians are made a dumb choice in Mark Carney, and that the country is going in the wrong direction and basically is deteriorating rapidly. Because are you kidding? You're kidding yourself if you don't think that is the narrative that many people have, because it's true. Now, how do I know that? Well, based on social media, again, I'm not on Facebook anymore, but I'm on X and I've seen Instagram and other posts, and it's my belief that that's the case. There are many conservatives out there right now that don't think that Pierre Poilievre was done right in this election, that feel as though Mark Carney pulled the wool over their eyes. And again, I think that blaming the electorate is not the right approach. I think that there's some truth to be said to the electorate is always right for whatever reason. And look, you could say in the United States what's going on with Donald Trump. And the pendulum will swing, folks. I've said this before. But I don't know that blaming Canadians for what happened is the right approach. What's your take on this? Maybe you think I'm dead wrong. And again, I'm not defending Mark Carney or in this at all. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. I don't know if I'm making any sense or not. David, go ahead.
Hello.
Hi there. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. How you doing?
I'm well. You?
Good. I'm really good. Yeah, I told you my whole life, eh? I've been a conservative my whole life, like my old dad. This is the biggest mistake we're ever going to make. I think Carney is going to sell us out to the Chinese. We're lucky. We got a billionaire up here, a billionaire in the south, and as far as I'm concerned, he's going to run us right into the ground. I do not believe one thing he said. That's all I got to say.
Okay, there you go. Again, taking no ownership over it at all as to how the Conservatives campaigned and their messaging. If it's that obvious, why were the Conservatives unable to convince enough Canadians otherwise? 902-405-6000. Mike, hello.
How you doing today, bud?
I'm well, you?
Good. Well, goodish. Look, I'm going to be completely straight up. I would not consider myself any party, never have been, and in all honesty, it's been well over 30 years since I voted. And one of your questions was, what encouraged you to vote? Well, Darren Fisher encouraged me to vote because I spent 9 months trying to get a phone call from him. He ignored me, and next thing that happened was the police showed up at my door because I was harassing him and his staff. Your comment about the people being dumb voting in the Liberals, I got to agree with you, Todd, on that one, because look what they did for 10 years. And they've done a lot of destruction to this country. And the guy that's in there now has already put in his platform that he's going to double the debt. So those that voted that way, you must hate your great-great-great-grandchildren because they're going to be paying.
But Mike, back to my point. Why, if what you're saying is true, then why were the Conservatives unable to message that and convince enough Canadians?
You know, you're going to hate this part, but if it's any factor, I think that the media might have played a part in it. There was a whole bunch of talk. I think the campaigning of the Liberals plays in too. I'm wondering how many people out there that would have voted Conservative just said, frig it. All the polls are saying, all the media is saying, Kearney's a walk. Frig it. I'm not going to waste my time and go in and spend that time and do a vote.
Well, shouldn't
maybe it happened,
Mike,
maybe it didn't.
Mike, shouldn't that be more motivation for the Conservatives,
That's and you know what? I thought that was going to be your response. It should have been. So if it's even a factor, I don't know, but I kind of hated all the build up to the whole thing where, you know, Polyev was a cakewalk 6 months ago, and all of a sudden they changed the head of the snake and everything flipped. But anyway, Todd, that kind of your spiel got me off what I was going to. I want to ask you a favor, bud.
Okay.
You often have had people on from the legal field.
Yes.
And I want to investigate something through, like, your help. If you could contact some of the legal people you know, I want to look into, is it a possibility, because I don't know anything about the law, to put forward a class action lawsuit against the three levels of government for the treatment of seniors or the lack thereof in this country. I'm fed up, Todd. I've had it. Like, I don't know what to do. I'm so friggin' poor, and this is just, you know, with the billions of dollars being, I mean, even Pierre was going to cut back on some of the foreign aid.
Yeah.
I'd love to see it suspended for several years to get our country on track. But, you know, I got to try this avenue because, well, as I said, Darren Fisher isn't going to pick up his phone. Yeah. And not that I think he really cares about seniors. He's, like all the other politicians, sitting on a nice fat pension and doing well. So anyway, buddy, that's why I wanted to reach out to you today. If there's anything you could do in that line, like, If Vanessa has my number, keep it and get in contact with me or send somebody my way. I just want to even see if it's a possibility. The other thought was the seniors could start get involved in a union and see if we could get a pay equity, but I don't think we qualify to join the union.
Okay, Michael, let me put you on hold. Vanessa, grab your number, and I'll see what I can do for you, pal. I feel your pain, man. I really do. I feel for you, bud. I do. I can hear it in your voice.
It's sad, Todd. It's just not right. I mean, I asked him that day you had him on, and if there's programs out there and how much people are getting that are coming here. And I don't hate people that are coming here. We do need the population, but it's just the fact that, we're just not being treated well as people that contributed. So I appreciate your work. But
okay, I'll put you on hold. Vanessa, grab your number. Thanks, Mike. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, House Calls continues with Dr. John Gillis. Give us a buzz at 902-405-6000. If you have a health-related question or concern, 902-405-6000. We've got the doctor to the top of the hour. Got some room for you as well. Again, 902-405-6000. David's giving us a call. Hello, David.
Hi, Todd. How are you?
I'm doing well. You?
Good. So my question is that, a lot of people end up in the hospital for various reasons, and then maybe they end up passing away because they get pneumonia. So they didn't go in for that, but they end up having that, and that becomes the complication. So there is the pneumonia vaccine, and I'm curious, should more people be getting it? Does it really work? If you get it, how often should you get it? Does it really prevent death?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. So there are several pneumonia vaccines. There's Prevnar 13, there's Prevnar 20, and Prevnar 23, and probably a few others that I don't remember. Bottom line is the criteria for them are based on age, comorbidities, other illnesses. But most people over 65, everybody over 65 qualifies and should have one. The course and which ones you have vary a little bit, but that's something to discuss with your healthcare professional. But the bottom line is they're very effective in preventing, community-acquired pneumonia, which would, extend to, getting stuff in the hospital as well. I often have this conversation with people that, they want to be admitted or their family wants them to be admitted. And, there are different reasons for that. Sometimes people they're generally sick and need to be in the hospital. But sometimes it's a fear thing, and in some of the older generations, they expect if they're sick that they should be in the hospital, even if they're not dangerously sick. Families sometimes are frustrated with caring for a sick older loved one, and maybe they want a break from it. I often say to people, look, if I thought you really needed to be admitted, we of course would do it, but bringing you into a hospital for a mild to minor condition can expose you to other things, including pneumonia, including bowel infections with C. difficile, things like this. So we do see these things happen, and you've highlighted a part of it. We do need to protect people as much as we can with all the things. Pneumonia vaccines, RSV vaccines available now, shingles vaccines for our elderly, and making sure they're up to date on COVID and flu, all the things. And yes, we must, as one of the programs around this says, choose wisely, such that we're not bringing people into the hospital unnecessarily. And of course, it would never be, we don't want to admit you. That's not the case. We want to make a balanced decision as to whether admission is the best thing for somebody's health. And often it is, but sometimes, as you allude to, it's not. You have a mild pneumonia, your oxygen's fine. You can go home with these pills because I don't need to bring you in and have you catch something else. Or you have a mild, you have a pain condition that might, we could treat in the hospital, but here's a plan for outpatients so you don't come into the hospital and get pneumonia. So it's a very relevant point, and I think it's something that people forget about. So thank you for raising it.
So, sometimes the hospital is no place to be if you're sick, ironically. But let me ask a little follow-up on COVID. So when people are admitted to the hospital because of COVID complications, do they often die of pneumonia? And if they do, would the vaccine have helped in that instance?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, the inflammatory change caused by the COVID virus can kill people by itself, but there are people who are getting secondary bacterial infections on top of it, making it worse. So if you have the vaccine, you're less likely to get the secondary infection. I mean, the best scenario is you're fully vaccinated against COVID and you've had a pneumonia vaccine to give you the double protection.
Right on. Well, listen, appreciate your time.
Thanks, David. Appreciate it. Take care. Good luck.
Okay.
No problem, Todd.
Okay. Yeah, 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. We get some time to the top of the hour. Again, 902-405-6000. Dr. Gillis, if you had to prioritize vaccines as to what, and I suppose it depends on all types of factors, including people's age and their health background, but what would you say would be priority one for most people when it comes to vaccinations?
I mean, it needs to start with the basic childhood vaccines: mumps, measles, rubella, tetanus, diphtheria, polio, all the standard stuff. That we've done for years. That should be the priority. Now, if people haven't had those, circling back and getting those is important. For elderly folks, the things I mentioned, pneumonia, RSV, shingles, they can have a lot of negative effects. Shingles may not kill you, but it can cause a lot of chronic pain and a lot of debilitation. So, these are important things. Some vaccines you might consider more elective. Do you need hepatitis A and B if you're not doing tropical traveling or working on sewers, that sort of thing? Maybe not. That's less likely. A lot of people don't rate flu vaccines because it's only 60-70% effective, but it's still better than zero, and it's keeping the disease burden in the community down. So I think that's probably it. But I would say mainly focusing on the core vaccines when you're a kid. And if you didn't get them, you can catch up on those things. And it's easy to read online, and public health, wherever you are, is able to help with that.
Fair enough. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. One other story that I wanted to get to before we run out of time. I saw this on the CTV website, the CTV Health website. I'll read a bit of it and then get your take on it. It says, as you add more ultra-processed foods to your diet, your risk of premature death from any cause rises, according to meta-analysis of research involving more than 240,000 people. Here's a quote. It says, we looked at the risk of a person dying from eating more ultra-processed foods between the ages of 30 and 69, a time when it would be premature to die, according to the study's co-author. It goes on to say, we found that for each 10% increase in total calories from ultra-processed foods, the risk of dying prematurely rose by nearly 3%. So what would categorize, or what fits what falls into the category of ultra-processed foods, Dr. Gillis?
I'm not sure I can answer that for you. I mean, generally it's things with a lot of additives, MSG, a lot of sodium, a lot of preservatives. What does ultra-processed mean? I'm not really sure what that means, but generally that's the idea, is if you can eat things that are fresh, that haven't been, treated, frozen, dipped in God knows what, you're doing better for your health. Yeah,
hard to avoid though, right? It really is, and depending on your socioeconomic situation as well, it's hard to avoid. Would you say that's fair?
It is, and that's one of the things you said is very relevant. This processed food is cheap. And folks who are struggling to make ends meet to feed their families, to pay for medicines and other things, it can be very difficult. So, if a frozen dinner is $2, you're going to buy a frozen dinner. You're not going to buy the pork, which is God knows how much more expensive. So, that can be a challenge, and I think that's something government is aware of and is trying to address. But we have to be sensitive to that.
Can you exercise your way to good health, and if in fact you have poor eating habits, if you're ultra fit and burn a ton of calories, perhaps you're a marathon runner, whatever, can you avoid? Can you, I guess, indulge in some of these things? And if you're fit enough, or is that a misnomer?
I mean, it's all a balance, right? If you burn a lot of calories, you're gonna burn off what you're putting into yourself on the calorie side. It's the other stuff that's there. It's the preservatives. It's the salt. It's the MSG, things that just have other impacts on your body, your cardiovascular system, etc. Look, if you eat French fries and poutine all day and run 10K every day, you're not gonna beef up. But if those fries are fresh cut and the cheese is, that's okay relative to some of the other things that are out there. But again, generally, that is not a recommendation to eat poutine all day.
All right, Dr. Gillis, listen, I'll let you go, and good luck. Or let's hope that the Leafs get it done. Your prediction is what again for Game 6?
Oh, I think they're going to win. I think it's going to go to OT, but what do I know, right?
All right, Dr. Gillis, let's hope you're right. Thanks for doing it. Take care. Dr. John Gillis, that's House Calls. We do that each and every Wednesday, and let's see if he's right. And perhaps some of you might want to talk with the Toronto Maple Leafs when we have an open hour. We will get some time for you. And again, perhaps some of you might want to continue to talk about the election. I opened the show talking about the election. And I talked about the fact that, in my opinion, many conservative voters, that's quite a generalization. That's a broad statement. But a number of conservative voters that I've talked to or that I've read are very, very disappointed and are in some ways blaming the electorate, blaming Canadians for voting for Mark Carney, saying that basically it was a dumb choice. And look, people have their right to their opinions. But I would suggest that there's an old adage, and I think there's some truth to it, like all these things, they're not bulletproof, they're not foolproof. There's always nuances. But there's a saying that the electorate is always right. And for whatever reason, the electorate decided, for a number of reasons, of course, the electorate decided that Mark Carney would govern with a minority and almost a majority. And I think that slamming Canadians, saying that Canadians are stupid for making this choice, is not productive. I think that perhaps conservatives and supporters of the conservative government, or not government, party, could self-reflect and look at perhaps what went wrong. Why did they not get it done? What happened? And I understand that there were some extenuating circumstances. Justin Trudeau getting off the political scene was the number one issue. Because let's face it, I mean, Poilievre would have wiped the map if Justin Trudeau were on the ticket. But he wasn't. And Donald Trump is another factor. But look, I think conservatives need to look at what went wrong here and why they were unable to get this done. Again, the fourth mandate, and just simply blaming Canadians and saying that Canadians suck and this country sucks and the country's going downhill and we're going to be foraging for food because we're going to hell in a handbasket. I don't think that's productive. Now, I'm not saying that people don't have the right to be critical of Mark Carney and the Liberals, and certainly you do. And I've been critical of the Liberals and will continue to do so. But the idea that Canadians are idiots and this country's full of dumb clowns, and that's the term that they used in one of their last-minute messaging ads. They used the term clowns. I don't know that that's effective, and obviously it wasn't. So what are your thoughts on this, folks? Maybe you think I'm dead wrong. I received an email from somebody who thinks that I'm dead wrong in my comments. I'll read that email when we come back. But I just think that it's a time perhaps for more reflection, and simply gnashing of teeth and calling the country idiots and dumb and stupid isn't really productive. 902-405-6000. What's your take on that or anything else you've got in your mind? Again, 902-405-6000. Your calls when we come back. All right, taking your calls, 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Pete, hello.
Yeah, how you doing today?
I'm well, you?
Good. I got a little different take on some of this.
Okay.
And there's a couple of things. I blame Mr. Singh for a lot of this, and I think he paid the ultimate price for backing up the Liberals. Everybody forgot about Trudeau when Carney popped in, but nobody forgot Singh. he just continued to go down and down. He could have brought this government down, and everybody that was going to vote in one direction or another would have already have done it long before. But instead, we kept going. So everybody would get their pensions no matter what happened, etc. And what happened is, after January 7th or 8th, when Trudeau steps down, it's no different than throughout British history over in the Kings of England. Once there's nobody on the throne, and there's no government meetings for months and months and months, someone like Trump sees an opening. Mm-hmm. And most definitely, between Singh and Trump, definitely persuaded her, particularly when Carney came on with Trump backing him up, Trump playing with our system, our political system, and playing with our stock market like he does, to me, is criminal, but I guess that'll never happen. He can't get charged. Well, he is. He's a convicted felon.
Yeah.
Oh, that's who's running things, and now you're going to have these two gentlemen sitting down together. So basically, sorry, I missed a point. We have NDP will back the Liberals again, or they'll cross the floor and get their majority, or they'll back them again, guaranteed.
Yeah.
The Bloc, my opinion, the Bloc and the Liberals, probably not. Too many things in a separate way. But anyway, and of course the Premier, what did he say? He wanted $2 billion, and then he would back Carney. Well, $2 billion is our money. So in this scenario, they're going to back them again or walk across the floor, because we'll never know what the side deals are or what the situation is, and that's not conspiracy. That's just the way politics work. But you remember yourself 9 months ago, you were just on there raving about the Liberals and all the scandals, and everybody knew those were scandals. We all knew it. Yeah. I mean, billions of dollars worth of it. And now we've got the same friggin' people going to be running the country, including my thought is the NDP are going to join them. So we're going to have the same NDPs, and we're going to have the same Liberal people. I mean, who's different in Carney's situation? Not very many people. Yeah. And they're going to be the same people, and you're going to have Mr. Carney and Mr. Trump sitting down in Key Largo, whatever that place is called, having a cigar and a drink of scotch, making a decision for exactly how you and I should live. Okay. And to me, that was the whole problem. It wasn't who, conservatives, liberals, or anybody else. It was just the way it went down. And everybody, instead of thinking of us and the working people and the working class and the small business owner, they think of corporations, and they think, okay, we know what's best for you, so this is how it's going to be. And you know it, and I know it, my opinion.
Okay, Pete, thanks for the call. 902-405-6000. But again, I go back to, if it were that evident and that clear, why could the Conservatives and Pierre Poilievre not message that properly? Because clearly they didn't. And look, similar in the United States with Donald Trump. Kamala Harris was a horrible running or contestant for the president of the United States. She did a horrible job, a horrible candidate. Because if you had somebody who was a good candidate, they should have been able to frame the narrative to demonstrate why Donald Trump was not the right person. So again, I go back to blaming Canadians for the decisions that they made. I would suggest that some self-reflection might be a better use of time. And the Conservatives should figure it out and realize that there's something amiss with their approach. 902-405-6000. This is my take, as I always say. Fred, hello.
Yeah, Todd. You asked, your first question was, should we accept what was given to us? I'd say yes. I was willing to accept it if the Conservatives won, the Liberals won, then I will say I'm happy about that. There's 3 or 4 reasons, without even bringing in the Trump statements and this Trump stuff that was happening, that scared people away, and I mean conservatives. Yeah. And one of them was his alignment with the trucker convoy. Another was the fact that he wouldn't allow the media to talk to him during his campaign promises. Weren't allowed on the bus. They weren't allowed on the plane. They were all
questions that were put out there, and it was just like watching Act 1, Act 2, Act 3.
Right.
And what happened to him is he was not prepared when Mark Carney came on the scene, that Mark Carney would say, okay, I'm going to axe the tax. Okay, I'm going to do this. And every one of his things that he brought up was reactionary to what Mark Carney had proposed. Everything. You want to take the house tax? He said, I'll take the 15% GST off and buy you the house. He said, well, I'll do you one better. I'll tell you this amount of money. Okay? And he says, I'll take 1% off of the HST, and that'll probably cost Canadians $5 billion. Well, what does Poilievre do? He says, well, I'll take off 2.75, and it'll cost us $40 billion in revenue. Okay? And it just, when he didn't give his plan at the end of the day to the public until 3 days prior to the election?
Yep.
And all he got was a pass. Carney got good, and him and the NDP were caught unawares with a pass. And lastly, there were conservatives for Carney out in the West. Now, they didn't lose a lot, but if you take a look at those polls and you see how many more liberals voted in those ridings that are true blue conservative, that should scare the pants right off of them. And I asked my friends out there, because I'm in the military, okay, I asked them why. And they said they didn't like the fact that the conservatives have an extreme right wing in their party, and that they're pissed. They want these guys gone. They're the likes of the Proud Boys, the likes of all these other hard right wingers are backing and supporting Poilievre. They don't like Danielle Smith and her fact that she wants to, 75% of the people in Alberta don't want to segregate, but there's this 25% apparently that exists that do. So they didn't like that aspect of it either. Yeah. So at the end of the day, they have only themselves to blame, and they got to sort themselves out and get back to where they were, which was a lot more towards the center than they were this time.
Okay, Fred. I think you make some decent points. Thanks for the call. Take care. 902-465-6000. I think you made some great points. I really do. 902-465-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back.
Thanks.
All right, continuing with your calls, 902-405-6000. David's first-time caller. Hello, David.
Yes, hi, Todd. You asked the question about what could be a new approach. I would like to ask you that question with a possible hint here. Every parliamentary democracy in the world has this new approach, with the exception of Canada and the United Kingdom and Italy. What do you think it is that we need to do?
I don't know. You tell me.
Proportional representation.
Yeah.
That's what we need. And the other thing I disagree with you on is this messaging issue problem that you claim that the Conservatives had. There's nothing wrong. You got 40% of the vote. We're a multiple party democracy. So you don't expect one party to get more than 50%. They got 40%. That's quite legit. The problem is we are not negotiating between those parties. That's why we're in this mess. And just one more point is that in Canadian fashion, we are truly, why did the Canadian cross the road? To get to the middle. We have these minority governments that in a strange, twisted way are getting us to the point where I hope Canadians understand we've got to join the rest of the world in getting an advanced democracy based on negotiation. If we had proportional representation, we wouldn't have these problems. With Alberta, 30%, I think, voted Liberal. Mm-hmm. What did they get? Did they get 30% of the seats in Alberta? Absolutely not. And they need that voice. And that's what we need. And we're taking them to court, the federal government. It's embarrassing. Fair Vote BC, that I've given money to, taking the Canadian government to court over the unconstitutionality of the fact that we don't have proportional representation. That's all I'm asking. Basic democratic principle. You want to govern, you've got to have 50% of the votes. So what do you say, Todd?
Well, look, electoral reform is something that governments have been talking about. Of course, Justin Trudeau promised that way back in 2015 and never materialized. I think that the reason why it doesn't happen is because the party that wins is the party that would be responsible to do it. And some would,
right.
and that's probably why it doesn't happen. That's my take, David.
Well, yeah, and you're right. There's an arrogance within all the parties, including the NDP that have formed provincial governments. They talk about proportional rep, then they get in, they get power drunk on their 40%, and they dither and pander, as Andrew McCoy said. So I wrote a letter to Carney, and I said, do a little different. Why don't you show some leadership? Because the first quality of leadership is to lead, that is, put the interests of the majority ahead of your party. Why don't you give Polly a call, form an agreement with him? You'd got 80% of the vote if they got negotiations and agreed how to deal with Trump. Can you imagine how strong and legitimate and powerful a two-party agreement would be with 80% of the votes behind rather than the NDP? And under proportional rep, it would collapse because I think they got 5%. And my math is 5% plus 43 doesn't make it. They'd have to get three parties to form a government under proportional rep. But one last point. Canadians, if you don't know this already, you don't have to amend the Constitution. You just, like you said, Todd, you're dead right. We need better leadership in the parties for someone to say, we're going to amend the Elections Act. The next election will be under proportional rep, and it's done.
Okay, David, good points. I think you made some great points. Thanks for the call, pal.
Thank you for your time.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. Linda's the first-time caller. Hello, Linda.
Hi.
Hi there. Go ahead.
I've listened to your show for years, and I must say I really, really enjoy it.
Thank you.
And rather than just talk to the radio, I thought I'd call in today.
Okay. Thank you.
I really believe that Poilievre, he himself was the reason for Conservatives not getting in. And we all know, I'm not going to go through, I guess we've hit this horse too many times, but he is and came across as, saying too many things similar to Trump. And he is a little bit too far to the right. And like you and Steve mentioned the other day, I guarantee you, if Peter MacKay had been running the party, Conservatives would have been in.
Well, I'm not sure about that. I think that there's a real appetite for a further right of center movement. Obviously, it's there, but in order to get Canadians over the threshold, because like the previous caller was talking about, yes, there's a lot of challenges to proportional, to not having electoral reform and to having to get over that threshold. I get it, but the same rules applied to Mark Carney and the Liberals, and they managed to meet that threshold. So I go back to messaging, Linda. Really, I do, and I think that Poilievre, although he resonates with a lot of people, I think he scared some people away. I really think it comes down to that.
Exactly my point.
Yeah.
I know many, many people that said, I cannot vote for that man. I cannot see him leading this country. He scares me. I mean, I heard that, I can't tell you how many times. But I'm not saying Peter MacKay, but somebody who's a little bit more to the center than Poilievre is.
Yeah, okay. Linda, thanks for the call. Appreciate it.
All right, bye.
Okay, take care. 902-405-6000. Look, and I'm not suggesting that Mark Carney is not without his warts and without his problems and challenges, because he certainly has them. And believe me, as all political leaders go, I will not hesitate to criticize them. I'm not partisan when it comes to that at all. But that said, look, Poilievre and that hard-edged, right-leaning faction of the party scared some people away, in my opinion. 902-405-6000. Mark, hello.
Hey, Todd. I agree 100% that Mr. Singh is the problem of all this. He should have taken the Liberals down way before with Trudeau there. Would have been a whole new outlook now. And I'll tell you, I voted Conservative this time around. I think what really pissed me off to vote for the Liberals is for the Conservatives this time around is that friggin' Sean Fraser. And I don't know how people could have voted for him for what he did. That's people that have no intelligence when it comes to voting and to looking at the whole picture of things. And I'm really pissed with everybody who voted for Sean Fraser, because to me he's just a self-loathing little politician pig. And they talk about Poilievre, that's been a lifer of a politician. Well, Darren Fisher, what's this, his fifth term, Sean? Todd?
Yeah. Fisher's been around for a long time.
So is this not a lifetime politician also? Just there, basically, you only see his face every 4 years, re-elect me so I can continue my bank account, so I can continue my pension. That's all he's there for. And just for the record, his name is not Poilievre, it's Poilievre. P-O-I-L, not P-O-L-Y.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Appreciate the call. 902-405-6000. If I don't get it right, I apologize. If I don't get the right inflection on Poilievre. Chris, hello.
Hey, Todd. Just wanted to chime in with what you're talking about today in the election results. I think three things happened. One is Trump did, get involved with his rhetoric from south of the border. I think that affected and influenced a lot of the older population, your boomer onward. And I think that some of the voting was voting out of fear, not out of, looking really at what's coming forth and what each party is going for. I think the young generation voted heavily in the Conservative. I asked a lot, and I was thinking that they'd be more, liberal leaning, but they were, to my surprise, when I say younger, say 30, in the early 30s and downward. And, that generation sees it. They see the writing's on the wall to them. They see, what's happening and how hard it is to try to just establish life in Canada. I think another big thing is we've taken in, and back to Sean Fraser, we've taken in a lot of new immigrants, and listen, we need them. There's no doubt. But the amount, when you look at all the other nations that we've taken in, comparatively speaking, there's a lot of social media posts where, people went around and just interviewed them, said, who are you voting for? And a lot of them went for the Liberals because, they a lot of these people got out of war-torn countries or countries that are heavily populated without opportunity. So who are you going to vote for? And then when you look at Poilievre, I think his message and what he wants for Canada, if you really go back, he hasn't changed what he said for a long time. There is some level of integrity to that. And the last thing I'll leave it with, Mr. Carney, it's really interesting that Brookfield bailed out Jared Kushner in 2018 with Couture money, which is still under investigation today. Interesting fact. And so I'm sure Trump would want to work with him because probably knows him a little bit. So we'll see. Hopefully we all come together and the country gets on track because we're not going in the right direction still.
Okay, thanks for the call. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. Continuing with your calls, 902-405-6000. That is the way to get a hold of us. Again, 902-405-6000. Let's talk to Alan. Hello, Alan.
Yes, hello.
Hi there. Go ahead.
Yeah, Todd. In my eyes, it seems like it was kind of thrown. Like, if Poilievre would have won, he would have won. But the way Danielle Smith had been down there and the way Western Canada has been treated by the Liberals, there was quite a big hope. I'm pretty sure Trump had a little bit of thought on this, but well in advance, was that there's three provinces that are end up going to be part of the U.S., because when Quebec wanted to separate, nobody wanted them. But Alberta wants to separate, and only a fool wouldn't take them with the financing, the financial gain that comes from that province. On top of the financial of the oil and the potash and everything that they have of value, is there three provinces, if they turn into states, is 6 senators that will be Republican. So it makes sense on both ends, because Alberta's been paying how many billions of dollars for all the other provinces in welfare payments, and getting 25 to 35% less for the oil than what it would get on the open market because it's blocked in.
Okay, so what are you saying? Who blew? So who threw the election then? What are you saying?
I'm saying, like, Poilievre could have smoothed the things out quite a bit when he was in certain parts of the country, and he never changed anything. And for the longest time, you didn't even hear from the man. So I think there was it could end up. It's a possibility, because I'm not a liberal person that says we know. That's all they ever say is we know. They never once say we believe. so that when they're wrong, they backtrack. But I believe that there might have been a little bit going on there. Daniel Smith had been down to the States several times, and there is a large movement in Alberta wanting to separate. And who wouldn't want to take?
You say large. How do you know it's large? I don't know that it's large. Why do you say that?
It's large.
Why? No, you can say it's large again and again. How do you know that?
Well, I'm here in the East Coast. A lot of people from here live out there. Went out there, and there is a lot of talk about wanting it to go.
I think that there's some, but I don't know that what defines large, Alan. I don't know that's.
Well, the fact that my point being is that with Carney getting in, the powers that be knew that a lot of people in Alberta would say, "Oh, we're going to get even screwed more. This guy wants even more carbon tax." So by having him being installed the way he was installed, I mean, he didn't have a seat, and he became the prime minister. So I mean, you can't say much more undemocratic. The man was.
Well, he was the prime minister for 5 minutes. I mean, that was logistics. Really, is all that was.
Yeah, but it's an unheard of situation, right? It's never been done before.
All right, thanks for the call. I'm not sure where else we're going with that. 902-405-6000. Dennis, hello.
Hello.
Hi, Dennis. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm just going to say I voted for different parties over the years. I'm 72 years old, born and raised in Nova Scotia. I usually vote for the person at the time, not for the party. The parties over time in Canada have got too far to the right, too far to the left. And I'm looking forward to Carney bringing the Liberals back towards the center where they should be. They're really the only last central politician we have is Jack Layton. Unfortunately, he was probably the best prime minister Canada ever had. Never had the chance, unfortunately. The middle of the road is where you got to be to deal with everybody. The Daniel Smith, to me, is just a queen wannabe. She's worrying about herself more than anything else. There's enough stuff going on within her province that she can't handle. Health care has made cuts. The drug problem. She can't even handle stuff in her own backyard. So the last person I'd want on the international stage is her to represent me. Polymov, his problem was 20 years, he hasn't really done much while he's been a politician. You know, he had a paper route when he was a teenager, big deal. So to me, he doesn't know anything about business. It's irrelevant. Carney definitely knows that stuff inside out. So at least give him a chance to try and get things back to the center. And I heard on the news today that, I assume it's correct, that Daniel Smith is changing legislation in Alberta. So instead of having like 600,000 signatures to call for a referendum on something, she's lowering it to 100,000, which is, that's not a good sign. She's trying to change things again.
Right.
The Conservatives were too much like the MAG in the States, and look where that's got the States right now. They're in a mess. Hopefully, we won't be down that road. We're smart enough to stay away from it. The problem with the young people that I find is they're not great judges of character because they haven't been around long enough to meet enough people. And if they saw Paul for what he was, they'd realize why nobody wanted him.
Well, I don't know that you need to be old in order to be wise. I think that's perhaps unfair.
But they were the ones that raised the retirement age to 67 from 65,
and they reversed that.
They voted against child care.
They did listen.
Raises for seniors.
Dennis,
they're getting theirs through their government pensions and all the rest of it, but they were never ones for the people, as far as I could see.
Okay, thanks for the call. 902-405-6000. Stephen Harper, to me, is the fear-mongering of what Stephen Harper is something that I never supported. I think that Stephen Harper was certainly much more moderate than Poilievre, in my opinion. 902-405-6000. Jim, hello. Hey, Jim.
Hi. If I'm on the air, I go by James, but hi.
Sorry, James. Yeah, go ahead.
Briefly, I think you've done a great job today because, Winston Churchill, democracy is the worst system of government except for all the rest.
Yeah, that's right.
The people are, we're so fortunate in Canada that the vast majority accept the results and get on with life. We're all entitled to our partisan opinions, but we don't question the system and we don't question the integrity of who voted for whom, why. For 40 years, I've attended the vote count at different polling stations, on behalf of a certain political party. But I'm happy to say it's incredibly transparent, fair. Like we're so lucky we live in Canada compared to other countries in the world where it's not necessarily the case that the process is fair. Maybe on the proportional representation, maybe some kind of neutral, quote unquote, royal commission could look into this. I know it's a bit of a partisan issue, but we're in a minute, as they say, or a moment now where everybody's kind of on the same side, trying to say we need to protect our sovereignty and so on. So maybe some kind of neutral commission to look into that rather than make it a partisan issue, because it's complicated. Regarding separation of Alberta or whomever, Quebec, following what all those dramatics in the 70s and then 95, a constitutional amendment was passed to make it very difficult for a province to separate. I don't have all the details at my fingertips, but it's not as simple. It's very complicated, and it should be, because it's a big, huge deal. So you can't just, put out some fake poll and say we want to separate and we're allowed to separate. That's not the way it works. Anyway, thanks.
Okay, thanks, James. Appreciate the call. Take care. Let's talk to Doug. Hi, Doug. Go ahead.
Hi, Todd. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
You're 100% right on the messaging bit. It's the messaging from Poilievre that got me. Like, if I hear lost Liberal decade or carbon tax Carney or common sense Conservative, like one more time, like enough is enough. Like, it can't just be slogans and nicknames, because then you do sound like that orange fella down south. And I get people were, tired of the Liberals and Trudeau. I get all that, but it was just you can't have. I don't think you can necessarily have a pit bull as prime minister. Like, he's great as the leader of the opposition. Pit bull, you need a bit of pit bull in that role, but at some point you've gotta operate in a bit more of a stately manner. Do you not?
Well, yeah, I would say so.
It's just It's just like his messaging, just the rhetoric and the messaging out of him. It just it turned me off. And it turned off a lot of folks. Obviously, there's a certain point where the Conservatives, they have their base and people are going to vote blue, same as just people who are going to vote red. But to get to that point where you're bringing in the rest of the votes that he needed, it just seemed like his messaging was it was too much of sounded a little too much like Trump.
Okay, Doug. Thanks. I'm out of time. Thanks for the call. Thanks for the calls, everybody. I appreciate it very much. We'll open the phone lines again tomorrow between 11 and 12. I'd like to thank Vanessa Van Ness on the other side of the glass, the control boards, doing a fine job as always. We're back tomorrow at 10 o'clock. See you then.